Okay, so I'm sharing a presentation today with a real developer. I'm going to start just a little bit of context. And this, my part is an exploration of things that you can do with publishing or retrieving linked data in a BibFrame format from Alma, which you can now do. I am not a developer. This is, not imposter syndrome. My job really doesn't involve development right now. It involves taking care of Primo mostly through organization, planning, and interacting with people. But a few years ago, I did a pilot project at Emory University Libraries in Atlanta that did relate to linked data. I've been interested in it for a long time, and I'm coordinator of the Linked Open Data Special. It's just a working group now. Okay, but after me, you get Josh Weisman, who's a real developer. So how many of you? I'm going to assume a couple of things. One is that you know what about the MARC format for bibliographic data, if you're in this room, and that you have heard about and maybe studied just a little bit or more linked data, RDF, the semantic web, triples, etc. And if you haven't, I invite you to look these things up and find out more. How many people have not heard of BibFrame? Okay, maybe a few, but most of you. You know what it is. It is an RDF ontology for representing bibliographic data being developed by the Library of Congress as a replacement for the MARC format, MARC 21 format for bibliographic data that we're all using in our library systems today. And they've been working on it for some time. And you can, oops, I'm going a little bit fast. Yes, okay, so there's this ontology. And I think I'm missing something here. But basically what I'm going to say is that this project has been going on for quite some time, and so we've tended to sort of sometimes get the feeling that it's never going to happen. At the BibFrame Update Forum at American Library Association meeting this summer, July 24th, Beecher Wiggins of the Library of Congress stated that the Library of Congress is committing to implementing BibFrame as a replacement for MARC. So eventually, you will probably be able to get MARC for a long time, but it's going to be backward converted from BibFrame. And so if you haven't been getting into linked data, now might be a good time to maybe pick up your learning a little bit. Now I'm going to talk about how to get BibFrame out of Alma, so you can take a look at it. And the simplest way will be go into the Alma client and the cataloging module and look at editing a record, and you'll see there's a tab right there that says BibFrame. And you can look at it there, copy and paste it from there. Okay. And the second way is pretty easy too. That URL up there is for, yeah, that is using an API, all right? So if you know the MMS ID of an Alma record, you can just create a URL like this one, and notice that you don't have to have any kind of password or login to get to this. So don't everybody go to the Emory University Primo, grab some of our MMS IDs which are visible there, and experiment on our Alma, especially not all at the same time. Please experiment with your own system. You will have to go into the Alma configuration and enable linked data capabilities. And there's some instructions on the developers network of how to do both of these things. Okay, so the third way is to publish BibFrame from Alma. And this is a Alma publishing profile. And you can see that you can do a one-time or incremental publish, and that the output format, you can choose BibFrame bibliographic. And you could even set up a regular job so that, say you have a set of records chosen around a topic search or something like that. And when it gets updated, you can publish more BibFrame, and you could use that as the basis for a portal or a subject-specific resource of some kind. It's just one idea. Be prepared for much larger file sizes than you get with Mark. Okay, so once you have some BibFrame, where are you going to put it? What are you going to do with it? One idea is put it in a triple store. So GraphDB is my choice for this demo, mainly because I hadn't looked at triple stores in a while, and I had used something called ELUNA in the past. That is based on the Sesame platform, and it has it allows you to do certain levels of reasoning across your data. Okay. And that I thought was the most interesting capability for linked data. So GraphDB is the successor to ELUNA. And there's a free in the cloud version. Now this is a commercial product, but they have this free version. So I said, why not? I don't even have to install something. And this is what, it's very easy to create a database. You pick a name for it and some configuration. You have to decide what kind of reasoning you want to do, and this may affect the size of your database. Being able to use OWL, same as, is the most important thing and useful, I think. One annoying thing about this cloud version, and the reason I'm not showing you a live demo, is it tends to time out after a very short time, and then you have to relaunch the database. Okay, but maybe a small price to pay for free. And if you were going to get serious, you would want to install it on a computer, and you can install a free version on a computer. And for a larger project, you would want to either look at the paid version or at some other open source databases that are out there, or other databases. So there are various ways to then get your triples into the interface. I just copied and pasted that one record from Alma, but I've also loaded files that I exported from Alma, and you can choose the format. RDF XML is what you get from Alma. But you could also load from Turtle in triples, etc. And there's some settings. So after you've loaded, then it looks something like this. And it's about as fun to read as a Mark record is. But there are some things we can see here. So on the second line, we can see that we have a subject, and the URL is actually a work identifier that Alma creates for every record. Okay, so work is one of the levels of description along with expression and item in BibFrame. And this particular work, we can see that it has a predicate of BibFrame content. All right, that's saying this is what the statement about that work is. And because that URL under object is somewhat transparent and it ends with txt, we can pretty well guess that that the URL means text. Okay, pretty simple. We can also see there are a lot of blank nodes if you look at object. you'll see an underline and then node 24. These are a feature still of BibFrame 2.0. A lot of people think that that's really unfortunate because it can create some problems with querying. And the admin metadata section up at the top, I think, is particularly problematic. These are groups of statements, but no URI has been created for that statement group to link it to the object, the section of BibFrame that we're describing. But since this is a brief presentation and I don't want to impress you with how hard it is, I want you to see how easy things can be. Moving on. Are we running running out of time?
No, plenty of time.
We're close. Okay, BibFrame, once we got BibFrame, what else could we do? We could add some more data to our triple store, okay, in whatever direction we want. So I'm interested in the author, George Washington Carver, who was a African-American agricultural scientist and who published this 2-page pamphlet in 1916. And so I'm going to go out and get the authority record for him, which is published by the Library of Congress in linked data id.loc.gov. And that will give me the kind of information authority records have, including variants of names and so forth. Then I might want to go to a virtual international authority file. That might have more data, especially if I'm interested in variant forms of the name in other languages and scripts. But I'm not right now. What I would be mostly interested in there is that sometimes VIAF in a separate file has a link to Wikidata. And Wikidata can be a source of a lot of good information and links to other data sources. So it's a hub. It's a hub. Of course, Wikidata is built from Wikipedia. And so sections of Wikipedia records and terminology that's in Wikipedia records is going to show up there. But other data is being added also. Okay, and there's a lot more places that I could go, but this is enough for demo. I will mention that I didn't see any way to get to construct a permalink, a link to a Primo record from the BibFrame that I get out of Alma. I'm sure there's a way to get to that, but it would take some more steps. So once I have all this data together, then how do I look at it? Well, we can use Sparkle queries in GraphDB. And we can make those available to other people through a web interface if we want to build one. But Sparkle endpoint and Sparkle queries are a lot like SQL queries, only they're different. And this is a very simple one. And it just says, give me the subject and predicate of all the triples where the object is this identifier for that person, G.W. Carver. And because we have added to our data OWL same as, this identifier in authority data from Library of Congress identifies the same entity as this URI over here in Wikidata. We get everything. So I'm seeing results. I know this is kind of blue and pale, but we're seeing results from both Wikidata and id.loc.com and the BibFrame that we brought in from Alma. Okay. And a way of visualizing what we've got is also provided by GraphDB with this visual graph. And from this we can see things like the fact that George Washington Carver was a botanist, that he was a human being, that he received awards, that he had anemia apparently, or something about him has something to do with anemia, you know. So that can help you to get a feel for what you can do with that data and what you want to display. There are many more sources we could go to and other avenues we could explore from this record, just this one record, like subjects. So that gives you an idea of what you might be able to do with the linked data coming from Alma now. And I'm closing with this little bit of JavaScript that is provided by Onto Text for GraphDB to give you the awareness that yes, you can do Sparkle queries using JavaScript, pull in the result to your web page, parse it, and all of that kind of fun. I'm sure all of you would be capable of, but I'm going to stop here. So what do you want to do? And I'm going to turn it over to Josh with just a couple of plugs. The RDF Lib is the third link there. And it couldn't be a very useful JavaScript library for working with RDF. And a link to our special interest working group. And if you're interested or if you have use cases or you want to talk linked data, see me later. And now I'm going to turn it over to Josh.
Great, thanks. Is this on? Thank you, Laura. Good morning. Have any more morning? Thank you, Guy. Boy, day 4. Any room left? It's a busy, busy day. Lots of presentations. I hope you've saved some room in your brains to get some more information. I got to let you in a little secret. No one's recording this, right? This is my favorite day of the conference by far. Don't tell anybody. So I'll add my thanks to Mehmet and the rest of the organizers and the presenters today. It's wonderful to sit here for a whole day and see what you have done. And I also appreciate your willingness to share it with the rest of the community. So we're looking forward to the rest of the presentations today. So Laura set me up by saying I was a real developer. My developers and my team might disagree with you, but we'll see how we do. So what I'd like to do is expand on what Laura shared, talk a little bit about linked data in general, and then go through what at least I consider to be a classic linked data scenario, right? So I may or may not be a developer, but I'm certainly not a librarian, so I can't speak authoritatively on all the benefits of linked data, but I can tell you from my perspective where I see promise and where I've seen already some use cases that some institutions have implemented themselves, and it's great to see. So author cards made easy with linked data. So what is the classic, in quotes, linked data scenario? So for me, the classic scenario is to be able to bring in information from links from other sources, information that's not necessarily a part of whatever record you're dealing with now, right? So I always bring the example of when you're doing a Google search. I'm sure many of us, before we came here, searched Prague in Google. And when we did that, we got a whole bunch of links about Prague, but also on the right-hand side, right, we got additional information, maybe a map, maybe a little description, maybe some weather, who knows. But that was because Google recognized that we were doing a search about some kind of object or known thing, and Google enriched my search results with additional information that it thinks I might find interesting. And in most cases, I do find it interesting. So could we perhaps enrich our patrons, our users' discovery experience by adding in additional information that's not necessarily part of the record that they're looking at now, okay? So the classic scenario might be that I have some kind of record that has perhaps a subject, perhaps an author, which is linked to an authority, okay? LC Names authority, like Laura showed us a minute ago, for example. And using linked data, I can then crawl around the web and get these machine-readable links and go find additional information about that subject or author. And for example, as Laura pointed out, I can go to VF, which is the Virtual International Authority file. And by linking to there, I can link to Wikidata or DBpedia and bring back some more information. So I can kind of crawl around and get back other data. So how could I implement this kind of classic scenario using the tools that I have in Alma and also in the community. So some time ago, the University of Wisconsin at Madison published a blog where they showed how they did exactly that. Okay, and I have a link up there to this blog post if you're interested. And they, in their discovery interface, brought back some additional information and put it in there for the patrons to use, which was great. And what they published afterwards is they actually published a little tool they call bibcard, and that tool encapsulates the following of these links. And it, of course, hides complexities. That's what we like to do, right? We like to encapsulate and hide complexities. So there are things like, I don't know, LC records don't have outbound links. It has to create a VF link. It has to resolve the LC ID to VF, all this stuff that we could do in our own code. But why do that if someone else did it for us, right? The first rule of being lazy. Sorry, of developing. So we want to utilize this bibcard tool. So they've published it on GitHub. Okay, it is here at that link down there. And it's published as a Ruby gem. Okay, so if you're coding in Ruby, you have this. Of course, again, there's nothing in there that you couldn't do yourself manually. All they did was construct some links and do some HTTP gets and handle return codes, and they utilized some underlying gems as well, libraries. So here's my question: how hard would it be to implement this classic LD scenario using the tools that we have here? And the tools I want to use are the Alma JSON LD API, I'll talk about that in a minute, this Madison bibcard gem, and some Ruby in a script. Right? So here's a spoiler. If I say how hard could it be, hopefully the end is not too hard, right? So what is this JSON LD API? So Laura showed us the BibFrame. So Alma, just a little bit of background, has anyone today activated linked data features in Alma? Raise your hand if you have activated linked data features in Alma. Excellent. So hopefully after this session, you all will rush into your Alma and activate it right now, and then I can ask the question again, and a whole bunch more people will raise their hands. So once you activate that feature, which I'll show you where to do on the developer network, or on the developer network shows you where to do it, then you have access to a whole bunch of linked data features, including 3 different flavors of linked data, and APIs or endpoints or URIs that give you access to that linked data, okay, in 3 different places. One flavor is called JSON LD. It's a JSON format with some linked data in it. And in that linked data, you'll see a whole bunch of links to other sources. A second one is RDA and RDF XML, and that uses that WEMI structure, okay, that work expression, manifestation, and item. And then the third flavor is the BibFrame that Laura showed you, and that has work and instance, kind of two levels there, okay? So once you activate linked data in your Alma instance, you have access to those 3 different flavors of linked data. And then all of your bibliographic records can be exposed on the internet in linked data format, which is great. So if you're in Alma today, you already are in the linked data world. We've just given you a boost. I don't remember how many exactly Devere said, something like, 900 million bibliographic records are currently in Alma, and they all could be available in linked data formats today. Just turn on linked data, and you have access to those formats. And in addition, there's other things like publishing and the ability to view it inside of Alma. But if you turn it on, you'll have those URIs available. So that's step 1. We're going to activate the linked data integration profile. And then we have, through this URL syntax, and of course all this in the developer network, and I'll show you how to get there, you'll have this URI syntax. And notice it says open-NA. So that means it's open. So there's no API key required. Once you turn it on, these URLs are open and can be accessed. Step 2, we want to get the bibcard gem that Madison published for us. And then step 3, we have this short Ruby script. So I've put this Ruby script as a gist on GitHub, and I'll share that link with you at the end. And this Ruby script really has two important aspects. So the first one there is we're going to just use a REST client to get that JSON URL, that JSON LD URL that I showed you a minute ago, right? This one. Right? So that URL, I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And then once I have that JSON, I'm going to grab from it the LC, Library of Congress, ID, URI for the author. And that URI is the beginning of my linked data crawling. I'm going to feed that into that bibcard gem. And the bibcard gem is going to do all the other crawling, right? It's going to go ahead and go to VF, and then from there it's going to go to Wikipedia, Wikidata, and from there it's going to bring me a whole bunch of additional information. Like, for example, a picture, and date of birth and date of death, or a description, or other works. A whole bunch of other stuff will be populated into this object, and then I can use that to create a little view model with a simple author card. So, quick question. Where does that initial Library of Congress URI come from? Right? Because that's not in my bib record. So when I call the JSON LD API, what Alma does, and this is a little bit of the boost that Alma is giving you, is because the author in my bibliographic record is authorized, it's related to an authority record, so Alma can enrich that bibliographic record on the fly with the URI for that author. Okay? It does automatic enrichment, and it can do that for any of the authority files which are managed in the community zone. So it can do it for the LC subject and names, or GND, HKCAN, any of the authority files that are managed in the community zone. We know how to build the links, the URIs, for those authority records, and therefore we automatically enrich it. And so when you access a record in linked data format, whether it's via one of the APIs, or whether it's publishing, or even real-time inside of Alma, we go ahead and add links wherever we can. And so when I access that JSON LD URL, Alma pushes in there links for all the authorized fields. And so then that's what I use to feed to the bibcard and go out and get additional information. With me? Little head nods? No? Yes? We're still good? Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if we can make this happen. So first, just a quick stop off in Alma. We can see, more or less. Should I pump it up a little bit? Can you see in the back? Yeah? Okay. So let's go ahead and grab a record. And as I mentioned, because I'm not a librarian, I, by force of law, have to choose Harry Potter. That's a rule. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on this link here. And I've got an author, right? J.K. Rowling is my author. And so in Alma, I have a few linked data features right here. Okay, so actually when I was there, I could see, as Laura pointed out, I'll just show you here in live, I have that BibFrame tab, and that's the record in BibFrame, which is beautifully readable. We've definitely increased readability over Mark, right? And here in the More Actions, I've got an option for linked data. And so here, Alma is going to show me all of those links that it's going to automatically push into my record when I access it via one of the linked data formats. These are all the links that it knows how to add. So it can add a link for the ISBN number, for names authority, for subject authorities. Okay, so all these links will be automatically added. And if I go over here to this link, so that's a link actually to the JSON LD version of this record. And in the JSON LD version of this record, you can see it's JSON, which is great. But I've got here a creator array, and I've got a link to this id.libraryofcongress.gov. So that's going to be, remember, my little script is going to go out and grab this JSON LD. It's going to find this link and then feed that Library of Congress link to the bibcard. And the bibcard is going to go and get additional information. Okay? So again, in Alma, I looked at the record. I saw that I have, under the link data feature, all the links that it's going to put in. It even shows me where the JSON LD version of the record is, and that's what I'm going to access in my script. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the script. So the script is pretty straightforward. And here, I'll just show you, this is my JSON LD URL, and this is the Library of Congress link that I'm going to look for. Okay, so I'll go grab the JSON LD URL. I'll go grab it. I'm going to look for that Library of Congress prefix. And once I get it, I'm going to instantiate my bibcard with that Library of Congress link. And then I'm just going to create my view model and create my file. So let's go ahead and see what happens. Okay, so my little script takes a MMS ID, and it's going to go to retrieve the JSON LD. It's going to retrieve the LC names for that guy, and then I have my author card. So my author card has on it a picture. It has a formal name. It's got the birth date. It's got some descriptive text, none of which is in my bibliographic record. All of that came from the crawling of the web to find additional information. Okay? And of course, I can click on More Info, and that will take me over to the actual Library of Congress record for this author. Okay, so again, what did we do? We went into Alma. Oh, and I'll just show you real quick, because it's important to see. On the developer network, I want to give you I do have a link in my presentation, but just to show you here. So on the developer network, under Alma, integrations, there's a whole section about linked data right over here. And here we talk about how we do the automatic enrichment, and the different types of URIs that we add, and then the different formats. So you can be interested in BibFrame, you might be interested in JSON LD, or RDA, RDF. So for example, in the JSON LD, you can go in and see the URI, and how to get there, etc. And if you want to activate these, so you need to activate this linked data integration profile. And there's a link there to the online help. Okay, that's what Laura mentioned. Okay, so we activated the linked data profile. Via linked data? No, the availability is the regular APIs, not via linked data. So, so again, we activated the linked data integration profile. We access the linked data in Alma. We saw both the URIs that Alma adds automatically, and we had a link to the JSON LD version. And as we say, simple as that, we have our author card that we can now put into Discovery or any other place that we find interesting. As a matter of fact, there is already online a Primo add-on widget Open Discovery library that you can use that does this more or less, okay? There's two versions, one that does additional subject searches, and one that does author card information. Okay, so there's a link to the gist that I promised, so you can go and take a look at that very simple Ruby code. And then, of course, we are always looking for more use cases for linked data. We're looking for more usage of linked data. I hope the next time we ask, there'll be more hands in the room. Matter of fact, maybe, did anyone do it while I was talking, perhaps? Anybody? You don't have to admit it, it's okay. And then, of course, give us feedback. So Laura is the chair of the linked data working group, and I'm sure you'd be happy to get feedback and hear your questions and comments. So I think we have 2 minutes for questions if there are. Okay, I'll repeat your question. Oh, the question was, can you use other languages? Sure. This was just done in Ruby. Of course, you can, as I mentioned, I use that gem, and so that's why I chose Ruby, but you could do the same thing. You could use that URL, go out and get the information, parse the response, and then do the same thing in another language, of course. Any other questions? Great, thank you.